I am of the mind, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, that as we move into more of a secular society where people are no longer seeking that sense of community through, traditional religious and social organizations, that pop culture and collecting has kind of filled that gap for people. That nostalgia kind of builds that sense of community, and that's one of the reasons why I think pop culture and collecting has become more prevalent. Kind of moving into this new era. Well, I guess this new cell phone era, as you were saying.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I I think that Facebook is a perfect example of mass community. Like at this point, I've never quite counted it, but I probably belong to 50 to 60 groups, maybe even more. And there are political pin groups, there's He-Man groups, there's underground comic book groups, there's I belong to like a group that just we collect free or promotional comics, you know, and it's just weird because you can get dialed into these like groups, and there's a community there, and they overlap. Like the free comic book group, the promotional comic book group, they overlap with the underground people because a lot of times the comic books sort of overlap, or indie alternative culture comic books and toys in general. I mean, there's just massive amounts of places that you can meet like-minded people. If you've got like 5 categories that you're really into, Facebook is one of those locations. You can go, I fly fishing, scuba diving, and spear fishing, or there's like groups. And I think as much as Facebook gets a bad rap from time to time, and they're stealing your whatever, and fucking Big Brother's watching you, but you can't be paranoid. I mean, it's the world we live in. I mean, you're really paranoid. You got to take the camera that's on your big screen TV and cover it up with duct tape,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you on that. I mean, it's kind of the trade off, right? And at least now that people are a little bit, more aware of that trade off, they can kind of, make that decision as as a educated consumer on how much, data they actually want to give Facebook. Um, but
yeah,
looking
I
at
think a
pop,
lot of that has to do with cultures moving forward. So culture moves forward, and the norms and mores that we live under, the guidelines change. They adapt, they evolve or de-evolve sometimes. But everything was moving, and I think that the greatest fear out there is that, all right, my childhood that I grew up in the 60s and 70s will never be the same. And shit, yeah, it's never going to be the same. Because when I was a kid, you wanted to go out to a friend's house, you fucking called them on the phone, you waited 2.5 hours for them to call you back if you were in the house, and then so 4 hours would pass. Nowadays, my kids, they Google their friends, or they text their friends, and there's with them in 4 minutes. So that sort of patience that some of us had to grow up with doesn't exist anymore. And you see that people are very impatient.
Yeah, and I feel that also, people, because of social media for the most part, are just kind of conditioned that way. People want instant gratification. And primarily when it comes to like collecting and things like that, it is a patient game because I've bought and sold
Well,
comics, and you'll
it
have,
should be.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
should be a patient, because sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've had comics that I bought and then I put on eBay, whatever, and they'll be up there for 6 months to 2 years before someone actually pays me what I want for them. But I feel like that's also part of the fun of being a collector is going out and looking for these things, searching for these treasures, completing that collection, whether it's action figures, whether it's a run on comics, whatever the case may be. It gives you a sense of completion. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I never really played too many sports growing up. I did like football and stuff in high school. But, where some of my friends that I talk to, they'll have like trophies and stuff. I know other guys that their toy collections and those like collected runs are their trophies.
Yeah, yeah.
They've been patient for for years, and they've built up these collections. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of that goes back to like individuals who, maybe they only were able to get the one turtle that their parents would buy them, and then, years go on, they finally have a job, their own money, and now they can start
Right.
buying the stuff that makes them happy. And yeah, I mean, there's a sense of completion and I don't know, a little
But
bit of
but
like
I think in a
enjoyment
lot of
connection from the
ways,
past.
I think in a lot of ways, the collector family is kind of fractured because you have different styles of collecting now that you didn't have. Once they monetized comic books and started grading them, no, they're no longer comics because they're encased. I had a conversation with a CGC collector because I was kind of like confused as to why they put the CGC encasements in bags. So the comic book is bagged and then it's sealed in a case, and then you take that case and you put it in a bag so that the case won't get scratched up, which is completely oxymoronic because there's no way that the case getting scratched up is going to affect the condition of the comic book there within, which is actually sealed. Because I've had the great opportunity to crack, I cracked like a Daredevil 1 open that we used on the show out of a CGC. So I actually know how to open those up. But you look at that, and then you look at the Walmart, Target, the scalpers, the flippers, and there's this big like I'm reading it through the group threads. There's this big anti-scalper like contingency out there. Now I've been to Walmarts twice in my entire life, twice, because I live in an area where we don't have Walmarts for whatever reason. It's just too affluent. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. So, but there's this market where you can go out, and when the door opens at 7 a.m., you're the first one in line. You build up this relationship with the guy who stocks the shelves. You slip him a couple extra bucks, and he pulls like whatever treasure hunt cards or cars, Hot Wheels, or whatever hot action figure, and they don't hit the shelf because somebody's buying them and taking them, and then they're flipping them on eBay or Facebook, and people are arguing that. And I don't think that they actually have a right to argue it because it changes the market, sure, but it's no different than me going to a flea market at 5 a.m. with a flashlight and finding like some rare record or comic book that's sitting on the table for $1. That happens.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like that, collector's market. I mean, if you're gonna be, buying these, limited edition kind of new releases, right? That people can go to a Walmart and get. If you're not the one who's doing that, then you really aren't putting the effort forth to get that deal that you
Right.
want. So you're gonna be paying that. You're gonna be paying that cost differential.
Right. You're paying them to do the work for you, and people don't look at it that way. They look at it like, oh my God, they're going there and they're buying this before me. But you're going there at 5 o'clock at night because you got a straight job and 2 kids to take to school, and no fault of your own. Just that's the way the world is.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean markets evolve all the time, and primarily, I feel like because of the internet and because of those different groups, more people are getting involved in that collector scene, and just having more people getting involved in a certain kind of market, it's going to change the way those market dynamics work.
I agree. And I think, the pandemic actually has played a lot into that as well. A lot of people who were trapped at home, stuck at home, decided that, all right, well, I'll start a small business. Where do I go? Well, I go to eBay or go to Etsy or go to someplace. And I take the crap that's in the attic and I start selling it. And all of a sudden I make an extra $5,000 in 2 months. And I take the $5,000 and I go and spend it and buy more shit to sell. And, so the overall market got bigger. And then, if you're a hunter collector like I am, it, it got a little bit harder to find things. So what I did was I shifted my whole philosophy. Everybody wants to buy fucking 80s action figures. And I have a lot of 80s action figures. I've owned them for years. But, everybody's buying them. So if I go to my local flea market and there's, 1,500 people walking around, there's a percentage, 10% are buying what I buy. So that's 150 people possibly are going to buy the same shit that I'm buying on the exact same day. So what I do is I flip gears. I go like, all right, well, I'm going to start buying paper. So I started buying like vintage, antique ephemera, which is basically old paper. And, got into a little collection of Las Vegas 1950s brochures, and I paid $1 a piece, and I was selling them for $35 to $50 a piece. Now, it's not stuff that I personally collect, but it's enough stuff that when I find something that I want to buy, or I go in an auction to buy a piece of kaiju or vinyl action figure for my own collection, that I have the money because I've made it in a different way than I was making it a year ago. And that's a real secret to being sustainable, not necessarily successful, because when you're buying and selling, pop culture collectibles, the success is in longevity. It's not necessarily I'm going to make $1 million today. You're going to make $1 million over the course of 20 years. You know,
Right, right, and well, I mean, it's also like diversifying your product as well, and then you're diversifying, that market that you specialize in, and